I love cookies. I love cookies. I love cookies. I love cookies.
Welcome to Cookies, the world's most influential basketball podcast. I am Ben Detrick. Jordan Redaelli remains on vacation. Andrew Kuo outright refuses to take even one single solitary measly day off. Andrew Kuo, how are you feeling?
Pretty amazing. It's like opening day. The government announced we have 30 more days of this quarantine, this behavior, this social distancing activity, and I feel like it's opening night at the Garden. I've had an amazing off season to get ready for this. Some tuning up to do still, but I'm ready to rock, Ben.
Yeah, the last couple weeks, whatever it was, 14 days, 16 days, that was warming up. This is the big game.
It's
the
big
full
game.
month. Like, this counts.
Every day counts now, from now on, man.
How was your weekend? You had a wild one?
It was amazing. It was amazing. I went to Italy. I had a little tomato sauce here and there. I went to China, some sort of broccoli with soy sauce. I visited Mexico. I had taco night. It was so awesome.
At first, I thought you said Italy, and I was wondering, is Italy still open? I think they are.
They're allowed to be, right? Italy is
Yeah.
like the huge Italian mega store chain in New York City, and I believe they're allowed to stay open. I don't know if they are, though.
Because as someone who has a car, we are in the glory days of car ownership. If only there was somewhere to go. Because to get from Brooklyn to the city, now it takes like 8 minutes.
It's cool.
There's no cars out there. There's everywhere to park. There's no alternate side rules. It is the salad days for being a driver in New York City. Except there's absolutely nowhere you can possibly go.
I remember during the first blackout, I think my buddy had a car, and we all hopped in and went straight to Times Square. All the traffic lights were off. There was no street lights, so it's all dark. And Times Square was so surreal. Usually it's, lit up with LEDs and ads and like kind of residual light from every source. But it was just a bunch of dudes with machine guns in the middle with spotlights and everyone from the hotel sleeping on the streets. It was weird. Is it as weird having the streets empty these days?
I haven't been doing that kind of sort of, how would you phrase it, as ruin porn. I've just been kind of running some errands and marveling at how fast I can get place to place. And now I'm thinking of Italy could be a destination, as it's probably pretty freaking empty.
Yeah.
And because it's not in a residential neighborhood.
Yeah.
And maybe they have really good Italian delicacies that I can add to my, kitchen rotation.
Italy is an awesome experience. There's so many delicious things to sample. Restaurants within restaurants kind of feel. But as far as the grocery shopping at Italy goes, it's a little on the expensive side.
Mm-hmm.
But there's some things you don't really see all the time, like dried pastas from northern Italy that you don't really see at your key food.
Yeah. I would not be using it to substitute in for your local sea town. It's more along the lines of, it used to be too crowded to go to and was super annoying. And what if you can go there and pick up, I don't know, really good anchovies and some great San Marzano tomatoes and some incredible salumi with no line because no one's there. Maybe that could be a trip in which I could use my car. That's what I was saying. But I did that, and I went to a really beloved place in the city to get spices and to also upgrade my home cooking. And it took like 9 minutes to get into the city. Parking was a breeze. I walk in and there was like hand sanitizer. I'm like, I've beaten the system. But then you're in this store and you're like close to people and the aisles are narrow and it became the exact same aggravating and worrisome shopping experience that we have everywhere. So I did not beat the system. I put myself back into the system.
The struggle with looking at another 30 days, I'm trying to get myself hyped up for this long season, is having like the enthusiasm to make food. I'm at the point kind of now, it's like, can I just eat this tin of sardines over my sink and just call it a lunch? No, because I have cats. But I think I have trouble getting psyched to make something special.
As your enthusiasm for cooking at home starts to wane, are there tiers to this? Like the first one is several different items, well plated, each one more beautiful than the next. And like, how does it degrade?
Sometimes I don't quite eat out of my pot. Okay, I life hacked something in my kitchen a few months ago before the Rona. I've been buying, those old 90s and 80s wooden salad bowls that you would get at like Italian restaurants. They're like these laminated wood bowls. Right?
Yeah. I love those. I have one.
Yeah, I found a supply shop that sold them for like $1 each. So I have like half a dozen of them around my kitchen. They're so cool because
wait, why do you like them so much? I'm into this idea. I usually use like the metal circular bowls, like the very basic ones that nest inside each other.
Those are cool too. Yeah, I have those for like washing vegetables and marinating stuff. But I love these wooden bowls because you can be really rough with them. Not only can you drop them, you just don't have to be that precious with them. They're the cool size. They're like big enough where it feels like a nice kind of presentation to whatever, and
are they stackable though?
Oh yeah, they're made to be stackable.
Oh, gotcha. See, that's crucial.
Yeah, I mean, they're awesome, and they cost $1 each, and they last a long time. You cannot wash them and like leave them upright and have them dry because the wood kind of like warps. But if you just like turn them upside down in a drying rack, like I've been using them for a little while, they're awesome. I do everything in them. So I eat out of those, which sounds a little basic, but I love doing everything with those dollar wooden bowls, man.
So if eating anchovies over the sink, which you don't do because you have cats, is that as bad as it gets? Because that's probably as bad as it gets. I like anchovies and they're tasty. We're not talking about the food itself. But is there even a lower point that you can get to than opening a tin of oily fish and shoveling it into your maw?
Eating out of the fridge.
Ooh.
With the door open. That's kind of dark.
Yeah, I've never done that. That's really plumbing the depths of food degradation.
Yeah, like say you had a bunch of leftovers or stuff that was ready to eat, like small carrots, and you just opened your fridge and like sampled a little bit of whatever was closest.
I don't know if that's that bad because it feels like an activity you would do while you're inspecting the rest of the fridge.
Yeah.
Like you pick up some olives and you eat one and you're kind of seeing what else is in there.
What if
it doesn't feel like you're actually grazing for a meal?
Can we talk
I'm
about?
I'm gonna let that one go. I'm gonna say anchovies over a sink is still worse.
Oh, no I eat a lot of food over my sink. It's just easier that way.
Gets rid of the middleman.
Yeah, my friend has a small kid, and he just takes his kid's shirt off, and he's like, "It's just easier this way. I just don't have to wash it." But can we talk about? I was thinking about the refrigerator thing. Everyone's like, "This is the end of FOMO." Whatever. I think that might or might not be the case because I still have more FOMO than ever, maybe. But is this the end of something I love so much in the food world, like the endless buffet? It's the death of the buffet, isn't it, in the world? We're not going to roll up to Fuddruckers and make like a pickle sandwich anymore.
Will Ponderosa survive the apocalypse? I don't know.
I don't know.
The steam table just doesn't hit the same.
No, like what are you going to do at a wedding? Like what are you going to do at like a big cookout? Like all these, it might not be that different because human beings just like pleasure more than fear. But
I think it's okay at a wedding because a lot of those events that are a little on the fancy side, they'll have someone there who distributes it.
Oh, man, you don't watch the Fear of the Walking Dead, I assume. There's a
No, of
wedding
course not.
scene.
The red wedding, yes.
The buffet. They're talking about all those red foods at the buffet, like Italian sauce, Russian dress. No,
Is that a shakshuka?
there's not that many red foods on Earth other than the most common red food, which is like tomato based.
Yes, that's true. Or pepper based. Come on. I feel like your harissa disrespect has reached new levels.
True. But
But
yeah,
that might also be it's pepper based. Yes, go on.
shout out to buffets, man. Like the New York City deli buffet has disappeared kind of already. That
Do you
used to
remember
be,
when that dude was had a tank full of his own urine and had a tube that was going through his sleeve, and he was spraying Midtown lunch buffets with his own pee?
there was also a poop buffet bandit for a
Oh
while
yeah,
a few years ago.
that was a huge mood.
It's a big mood. They caught him, but like,
A very non-tranquil aura, to be totally frank.
yeah. I mean, you'd think they would have somebody just like watching and like rearranging, but side-eyeing everybody the whole time. But there's a lot to do in a deli. It's lunchtime is popping.
It also is one of those crimes that is so chaotic that you would not have anticipated it. Like, how did you not stop this guy? How did I not stop the guy from having a pea sprayer?
Yeah.
I that wasn't like in my list of priorities.
Yeah.
That's the real kind of criminal that you got to watch out for. The ones whose plan is so nefarious that there's no preparation for it. You know, Osama bin Laden. Wait, get back to the end of FOMO thing, because you had a New York Times, what do they call it? An art ed?
It was in the op-ed, but it was playfully called op art. That
is playful.
It was in the Sunday section, and it was just chronicling how I felt about the coronavirus and my experience of it. And I said in the chart that the end of FOMO was on the table. It is on the table, but it hasn't reached me. I still have tons and tons of FOMO.
Can you break this down a little further? So FOMO obviously means the fear of missing out. But what does that mean in this context? Because we're all experiencing aching desires to go and do shit that we're not allowed to, which is FOMO. It's just that they're not occurring right now. Is wanting to do stuff and FOMO inherently tied together, or are we talking about two different emotions? Are these different feelings that you're at home and fun stuff is going on without you, which is like FOMO, or wanting to go out and do fun stuff? Aren't these the same?
I think they're tethered for sure. But also when we see, like, I have FOMO when you take a drive to go shopping. I'm like, that sounds nice. I'd like to go. I have fear of missing out on like going to a nice place in a car to shop. I go where I can walk to as fast as I can. I have FOMO with the people in Florida on the beach. I have FOMO on Zoom when people are like, look at all these cool, which is kind of backfiring on people. But when people post their Zoom screenshots and it's a bunch of my friends, I'm like, I was not invited to that. But meanwhile, if someone invited me, I'm like, no, we can't do this. Just make me miss you more. You know, this is terrible.
Well, yes. I think when you look at, say, someone in a very idyllic scenario versus being here traipsing around the rats and roaches and other infected zombies in New York City when you need to get a little, pint of ice cream at 3 a.m, that is not ideal in comparison to someone who is in a large country house taking hikes, walking over to ponds, plucking up fresh blueberries or whatever, and just not around people. That is my envy. It's not that I want to be that isolated, but for me, the biggest cause of anxiety is just proximity to people. So I do have FOMO for people who have space, but I also don't know if I can separate missing out from just like natural envy. And I think we've seen some of this in the responses to celebrities, where you see J-Lo and A-Rod in their palatial Miami mansion that looks eerily like the backyard from Parasite. And they're like, hey, we're in quarantine. And people are like, your quarantine is different.
And like hip hop party legend Ellen, like posting videos of her in her apartment being like, I'm going nuts in here. And everyone
just tagging up the walls, doing backspins.
Yeah, there's cardboard everywhere. That looks like a D-Nice jam right there. And which is becoming, it was already one of America's favorite pastimes, but now it might have overtaken A-Rod's old job, baseball, as the number one pastime, which is counting other people's money and what they should be doing with it and how they should be living in comparison to you. And we are so into that right now that it's kind of interesting, like who is getting the brunt of it, which is mostly celebrities. Don't show your house if you don't want people to comment on how much money you have.
And I think not only is that wise, but I do think we are seeing the beginning of real class resentment being voiced all over the place in a way that's not viewed as like, oh, okay, you're a hater. Mm-hmm. And when someone says, like who was it? David Geffen?
With that yacht, right?
Like a 400-foot yacht or whatever the hell it was.
Yeah.
And being like, stay safe out there, folks. I'm stealth isolating. And people are like, oh, word? Like, catch him and eat him.
He's helped make some of the things that we love, which is so funny, right?
But that idea of it's no longer cool to show your wealth. And we discussed this a couple episodes ago. But I think the response is what's different. People are now like, give me your money. Give your money to someone else. Donate it. Like, you shouldn't have that much money. And I think we may be entering a new era and I think this is good, of shaming wealth and saying that's wrong. You should not have that much money. And I think we need that tenor from the public, and it needs to be loud. And we need to have people saying, no, don't flaunt your money, give your money up, tax these people. Like, this is not fair. And I think that's cool.
I really miss the era of Hype Williams and movies like Belly and those videos that were so lavish. Like, I found myself pining for them because we didn't have this class discussion as much. We were just like, oh man, the future is bright. This is like fisheye prosperity. And it was exciting. And maybe I was just younger then. If I was older then, maybe I would have had the gripes I have now. But I believe in peer pressure. I believe in the way we kind of navigate how we think about certain things as a community. But it quickly turns into like something awful, I think. And we have to be careful with that. We talked about on it last Friday, I think, about kind of demanding receipts on how someone spends their money. And I think that's really unfair.
I mean, I don't think it's unfair. I think we can absolutely say, David Geffen, you were on this boat and you think it's cool to put up a photo of it? Like, you must be joking. That is incredibly not cool, and you shouldn't have that boat. Like, that to me is 100% fine. And I'm not even advocating necessarily, like, I'm saying, considering the circumstances, it is 100% cool if the response to David Geffen putting up that thing is, you are a sack of garbage. That is 100% fair. And he brought it on himself.
I understand he didn't read the room. I don't think it's fair. But we talked about it.
Fair to what? Criticize a guy who puts up a photo of himself on like a $500 million yacht or whatever it costs and is like, stay safe, people. Like, he's a villain. He is rubbing our faces in the fact that he has this wealth while people have nothing, while unemployment is spiraling to like what, 20, 30, 40% of Americans. And this guy's like, I've accumulated all this wealth and I'm just sitting on it. I'm literally sitting on a floating pile of money while you have nothing. Like, that guy is a villain. He's a super villain.
I don't think he's a villain or a supervillain. I don't even think that's wrong, and I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I'm allowed to be sad by it because I don't have that money and I don't have that freedom and I don't have the success of David fucking Geffen. But like we were talking about it in framing of like GoFundMe and how counting other people's money that way, being like, well, have you donated to this, this, and this? I'm like, yes, but I ran out of money. It's like, but you still have nice shoes on. I'm like, okay, can you take the shoes off? I'll give them to someone. It's like, but you live in a nice place. I'm like, it's true. I have an extra office in my bed, in my 2-bedroom. And when does it end? And I totally understand the outrage when rich people kind of flaunt their wealth, and they pay for it in a certain way, socially, as we're seeing now. But
well, we'll see. And I think that's what needs to change. There needs to be an incredible spike in rage and shaming of people who have this exorbitant amount of money, but that needs to be reflected in a push in government changes. You know, the fact that he thinks that's cool. He's old enough to have been alive when we had a top marginal tax rate of 91%. He was here. He's not a spring chicken. He was around.
I mean,
that was under Eisenhower. That was under Truman. This is not the ancient history. These are under revered presidents. 90% marginal tax rate.
But then we end up sounding like Philadelphia sports radio personalities who are chiding Embiid and Simmons for not doing anything when they want them to do something.
I'm also saying that if Ben Simmons put up a photo of him on a yacht right now, it would be fine to like tear into him. I'm saying that like there are incredibly wealthy people who've been allowed to amass that wealth for years, and they shouldn't have been able to do that. And to compare them to like a guy who got rich over the last 2 years, who is an employee, look, I get that we're talking about a sliding scale, but the idea that David Geffen is chill for doing that and shouldn't be absolutely demolished in the court of public perception, I disagree with that.
Yeah, I mean, he should be, if the court of public opinion doesn't like that photo, like, yeah, totally. But to call him a supervillain opens up a lot of discussions, right? Because
I'm not saying David Geffen is a supervillain. I'm saying to put that photo up, you have made yourself a supervillain. He is a supervillain for putting up that photo. Like, here I am, a supervillain. Like, you are scared and anxious. I'm looking at the most beautiful sunset ever on my floating iceberg of wealth. Like, I am a villain.
I mean,
I'm not saying that David Geffen himself is actually as villainous as like whoever.
I mean, it makes me feel a certain way for sure, and I think the income gap, as we always say, is maybe my take is the most important thing we have to figure out as like a society around the world, and I don't know if we're gonna do it ever, but I think it's the most important thing to change. And but David Geffen or these other rich people, I'm just looking at Barack Obama's Instagram, and he doesn't flaunt his stuff, but his life looks pretty awesome. And I think for someone who didn't agree with his politics, he'd be like, how dare he smile in a photo when we're all suffering? You know, like, I don't know where the anger begins or ends.
What I'm saying is that it's all justified. All of it. There's no, it's all justified. And
so he's justified in posting that photo.
No, I'm saying the anger towards everyone.
Oh, the anger
is really rich is totally justified. And like when you see, a moronic, cretinous sports guy from the Philadelphia blaming Embiid and Simmons, I'm not saying the instinct to be like, do more rich people is wrong. It's that why would you target them when they work for billionaires?
Right. I mean,
to me, it's like if you were going to intentionally target young black dudes out of everyone in this situation, that's like a personal issue. That's something you need to address why that's your target.
Yeah, I think it's almost broaching on a discussion of privacy, because like sometimes with these GoFundMes and something like Patreon, you can see how much money someone makes, and that becomes a discussion. Be like, oh my God, they're raking in that much money? Well, they're not that great. How dare they? And like, this happens So, what we're doing with cookies is like potting every day because we feel like it's important not only for me and you to have some sort of routine, but like to produce this, to have a project. And what we're doing is, if it even matters, but like giving somebody something regular to escape to every day. And, we like to joke and stuff. And what if somebody looks at our pod and says, why are these guys joking in such a serious time? Isn't that the same thinking that you're talking about?
No. I don't view that the same at all. I don't view people looking at the disparity of wealth and comparing that to someone cracking jokes. Like, I just don't see that comparison. It's like, don't smile. Like,
But it comes from the same. The shame comes from the same source, doesn't it? Throwing shame comes from the same source. Being like, your experience is not my experience, so your experience is unethical.
I disagrey. I don't think someone can say, you are cracking jokes just like I could be cracking jokes.
Yeah.
And saying, you are on a $500 million yacht just like I could be on one. Yeah. I don't think those are comparable.
I mean, in around my neighborhood right now, there's a lot of like, you can tell like mentally ill people or people with certain challenges, like, and they're out on the streets and they're more apparent now because it's empty. And I kind of like, how dare I flaunt my cookies hat and my warm jacket in front of them? Like, it makes me feel bad. And when does that end? Like, when does that feel
but I mean,
end?
just to argue that there's no difference between you having a nice, well-made, handsome cookies hat in front of a homeless guy is the same as like David Geffen, because we have to apply the same standards to every single person at every point. I just don't buy that argument. Like, I'm not that like slippery slope. That's not my thing.
But the middle class to the lower class is as big of a jump as it is from the middle to the upper class, right?
I don't know. I would say not. I would say definitely not. Because the middle class, which barely even exists, is not...
Go fund ourselves.
but is not wealthy in the way of we're talking about the billionaire class. Yeah. But also, look, we're on the same page that it needs to be the government that changes this.
Oh, yeah, this is what we're getting at. This argument is about the government. We're turning on ourselves.
But I'm with you. I think that is the real problem.
Yeah.
I'm also saying that if you were David Geffen, or if you were someone with an extraordinary amount of money, in these times, read the room better, or risk becoming a villain.
Yeah.
Like where the fuck is Bloomberg? Like, my guy was like, I'll spend $500 million on becoming president. All of a sudden, gone. Oh, $500 million for running for president, and where's your $500 million now? Where'd it go? Like, you can't spend that on ventilators. You can't spend that on masks. Nothing.
I fall on the side of it's not up to him, and I don't want Bloomberg around. Like, as soon as Bloomberg pops up, you're gonna be like, oh, this fucking guy. I'm like, right. That's why he's not around. But he's reading the room, like you said. But
what I'm saying, sorry to interrupt you. What I'm saying is, if our government has allowed these billionaires to exist, their lack of empathy and their lack of involvement has exposed the fact that we cannot allow them to exist as a society. If the idea was that, like, they are good to have, that people should be able to make as much money as humanly possible and reach this apex of wealth never experienced by humans on the planet, then, like, they are our new kings, and they should be looking out for us, because the way of the future is volunteering and giving money and donating. If they can eat up our money and in times of great need are reluctant to give it back, well, then they should not exist, because we can't allow that small group of individuals to have that much money. It's unhealthy for a society. We can't let these guys have $80 billion if they're not willing to quickly help us out in times of need.
Because kings throughout history have all been benevolent, right? Like, no king has been controversial.
But we're not supposed to be in a country that has kings. That's the whole point of a democracy. And we've
But like you
created
said,
and
we kind
allowed
of
them to
are.
become kings.
Right.
For sure.
So let's
from
be
the jump.
realistic. Like, whatever, the king's wealth is dependent on a lot of things historically, and not all kings are created equal. And yeah, you can call these guys kings for sure. And it's disheartening, and especially when you hear these stories about like on the ground people fighting this thing in hospitals. Like, it's really disturbing. So it's right. My brain first goes to like, well, Bloomberg is a New Yorker, right? Like, shouldn't he just swoop down and help everybody and not even blink an eye? I'm like, I don't know what he's thinking. I really don't. I can't get in his brain. It's like,
I'm just saying, if Bloomberg's not willing to spend $20 billion to help us out, then he shouldn't have that money in the first place. Just shouldn't have it. If we're going to allow this kind of wealth, they have to be actual kings in that regard. They have to say,
yeah, but kings
this society,
are all corrupt, right?
I know this, of course. Look, I'm not arguing the billionaire giving back system is good.
Look at this
I'm saying
king
that
stand over here. The king stand is logged on.
go off, kings. I'm saying that clearly this system doesn't work if we can't rely on our short kings like Bloomberg to kick us back money when we need it, because of course that is our money.
Yeah, I mean, Trump. Yeah, I'm very disappointed, but I don't know where my disappointment begins or ends, or acceptance of the disappointment begins or ends. I think what we're all coming back to, what me and you are coming back to, is this is on the government. This is on our leadership to figure this out. And if indeed Zuckerberg and Bloomberg are our leaders, they're in the rooms, they're in special interests, they're in the pockets of all these politicians like McConnell, who just answers to money. Well, then the money should do something, because that is basically what our leadership is at this point.
Yeah, and I'm just saying, if these guys are kings and they're not our allies, then they are almost certainly
kings.
Then they are our enemies, and they need to be brought to heel by the political system. Like, that's irrefutable. If they are not benevolent instruments of society, they need to be defeated, and their money needs to be taken away. That's what I'm saying.
Are you pro Bill Gates and the Gates Foundation?
No, he doesn't give shit away. He makes money every year. He always has more money. No, he's another fraudulent benefactor.
Is there any billionaire that you think is doing the right thing? I mean, earning billions is something that people have figured out how to do, and on the watch of our government, and that has to change. But they've made this money. Is there any billionaire you think out there that is doing the responsible billionaire thing to do?
I have no idea.
Are they at fault for just existing?
Yeah, of course. Absolutely. No one needs to have $1 billion.
So, for example, Steve Ballmer, you think his invention, his technological advances don't warrant his wealth?
No one should have $1 billion. You don't need $1 billion. There's no reason for one human to control that much wealth.
Can they have $1 less than $1 billion?
Yes, that's the limit. How about that? That's fine. You can have, or you can not have $1 more. You can have $1 billion. Anything over that, you can't have. Anyway, let's get to the real victims here. We've gone in circles about this enough. Let's talk about the real victims, the secret families. Today, Drake carted out his son, who had been previously anonymous, not even known about until Pusha T exposed the existence of Adonis. And now Drake did a photo of him, put up a photo of him and the baby's mother and the child. Was this a heartwarming moment? Why did he do it now?
I am even before this coronavirus, I was so exhausted of certain celebrity storylines. Drake's child and the Kanye Taylor Swift beef is something that I just had consumed, and I'm just done with it. I have eaten 5 grilled cheese sandwiches. I do not need a 6th. So when he dropped this photo, it's I'm actually really proud of or not proud, he's too young. It's I'm proud of my family, and this is us, and this is the real me. I'm I just don't care. I care about so many other celebrity things, but Drake's child just has no juice to it. He's got a bunch of children, I assume, and I'm sure he's a pretty good dad that takes care of them. I don't know. It's just not. There's no humor to it other than Pusha T rhyming jokes about him.
Yeah, I don't know enough about Drake's life to know if he has other kids or if he is a good dad in any respects. I have no clue. I just wonder about the timing of this sort of thing because Drake is so calibrated. You know, it's a moment when we're like thinking about our families and I've got an album coming out. So here I will. I'll make news. Like he's got an album that's coming out. So here he is showing his kid. And I'm like, it's the kind of cynical thing I could imagine from Drake. But it also might be completely genuine. Like I want to see my kid and I can't.
He's
like,
probably
I don't know.
He's probably so calibrated that he doesn't even barter in those terms of like reading the room and timing and cynicism. You know, like I think he's just like, yo, this is my beautiful family. And we're like, oh, we know you think like that, but it's not really what we're doing currently. But, you know, people do care about it. It went viral. So maybe he did read the room, and that is what we want.
For sure. And Drake is one of the best artists we've had in terms of utilizing the media cycle. You know, he's great at it. 50 Cent was, but that was a different era. But Drake is absolutely the master of, you know, Instagram, turning your, you know, like taking one line and turning it into a meme has basically been Drake's career over the last, I don't know, half decade.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan, but yeah, this is a skill. Like generating this kind of response is really hard to do, and there's so many celebrities who want this kind of attention, and Drake has this talent for doing it. And
oh shit! And think about what we were just saying, right? How mad people are at David Geffen for showing a $500 million yacht or whatever, or J-Lo and A-Rod in their Parasite house. What does Drake do? Who's actually good at this shit? Drake shows a picture of him, his child, and the kid's mom. Yeah. That's what he presents to us. I'm just like you, missing my family, missing my loved ones. What, like a black background? There's nothing lavish. There's no wealth. It's like I'm just like you. And Drake's greatest gift has always been relatability.
Yeah, I agree. Even when he's courtside and he's got a stake in the company of the Raptors, he seems like he emotes like one of us, right? Mm-hmm. Like he jumps up and down, he gets emotional, he's drinking other people's drinks, he's being goofy, and this is very tiresome for people who don't like his music, but I love his music, so I find this to be kind of charming.
I find his music also calibrated and cynical, but I like a lot of it.
Yeah, I mean, at that point of stardom, it's hard to avoid those labels. It's hard to manufacture a pop song and have it not be kind of cynical to somebody. But I forgive Drake because I like his jams, and my subjectivity kind of like ends with this drama with Pusha T, which crossed over to the basketball court. Remember, the daughter of the Bucks owner was wearing a Pusha T shirt at a Raptors-Bucks playoff game.
Yes, that's right.
But I just don't care about this because maybe, and I'm not pretending to care about like families and like that I don't even know, but you know, like leaving kids out of it is cool with me. Like blurring out a kid's face is okay. That seems pretty logical. But he's like, here's my kid. And I'm like, all right, you can do that too. You know, whatever.
Yeah. Tough call, right? I mean, the mother had to be okay with it. Mm-hmm. But to that point, like, you've never seen my kid. Here he is. And now everyone on the planet knows what my kid looks like. Yeah, I'm like, for the rest of his life, dude? He's going to be on TV. He's going to be seen, and you're going to know who this child is. He's a celebrity now. Mm-hmm. Interesting call.
Yeah, I'm sure it's fine, but
maybe.
Yeah, that
like you're making a decision for that kid in a way that like that kid walks down the street next year, he will be recognized.
Oh my God, yeah, or next week. Well, until we're done.
Right. I mean, when he's like old enough to like, or the woman walking around with that kid,
Yeah.
And wherever she lives, they go to the supermarket. People will recognize them now.
Yeah. Hey, if they're built for this and they think their kid will be built for this and their parents that can talk and discuss this through it, whatever. Do what you want.
It's true.
Like Madonna's kid ended up great, and she was in the spotlight for so many years. And I don't know, if you're equipped to do this, go for it.
The other secret families that we have to think about are the ones in Atlanta. According to your report about
That's right.
NBA players' refusal to sign with the Hawks.
I stand by my sources in Atlanta, man.
It would get them too close to their secret families, which apparently all reside in the
wonderful
Peachtree
city.
State.
Yeah, the musical capital of the world. Right.
So what are they doing now?
With the secret families?
Yeah.
They're eating a ton of sardines over sinks. That's exactly what they're doing, fending off their cats aggressively. But they're chilling. I mean, secret families is an abstract concept to me.
But like mistresses, tough time to be a mistress.
Is it though?
Or the other man, either one.
In what way? I'm open to this. In terms of getting like to see your complete family together.
Well, I don't mean complete family. I'm saying if you were like a married man with a mistress who you regularly canoodled with, you can't really get out of the house now.
No. Right. Why are you always going to the room to FaceTime your teammate? It's like, oh, we're just really tight.
I'm not even talking about players. I'm talking about regular dudes. If you had to really cut the guma loose these days.
What percentage of people do you think in America have secret families? Are we talking like less than 1%?
I mean, a secret
right?
family with kids or just like a mistress
kids.
or something? Oh, secret family with kids. That's got to be low. It's got to be like, I would say like 1 in 50, like,
that's high. Yeah, maybe 1 in 200.
Maybe so. I don't think there's a lot of secret families. There's a lot of drama with secret families. A mistress, whatever. That's like commonplace, or a dude, whatever. Yeah. That's all part of the game. But the
charge it to that game.
The secret family, that's an investment. Like they got a house. Daddy comes over once in a while.
That's
drama. I
have at most 2 friends who
most I have 2 secret families.
That would be amazing. God, I could not pull that off. But I have at most 2 friends who think they might have relatives that they've never met. At most. But I'm a certain demographic. I don't really I've stayed in one place my whole life, so I don't know that many people, but yeah, I have 2 friends who are just like, I might have brothers and sisters I'm like not sure of.
But it is wild that, a mistress can turn into a secret family real fast.
Oh, yeah. Right.
We're talking about 9 months. I was just a mistress guy. Now I'm a secret family guy? Ah, shit. All right. Let's put you guys up in the house. Yeah. I'm going on another business trip.
Yeah. I got a promotion, and that means I got to be on the road a lot. I'm joining the NBA. I'm a point guard for the Knicks now.
But you're a pharmacist. I know. I'm a traveling pharmacist now.
The Sixers forgot to sign a guard. I'm off to work.
Yeah. So yeah, dire straits. The secret families of America right now.
I read, to your point, I read a quick article about how the organized crime is suffering through this coronavirus too. Because I'm talking about like the things that kind of bubble up when we're forced to like pause our lives, and because there's nothing to bet on, and like they have rice pudding fronts to pay for rent wise still, but they're not collecting money off of like NBA games or baseball games or hockey games. There's no traditional things to bet on anymore.
Well, what about Vegas? Obviously the mob is heavily involved in gambling as well, and that ties to Vegas, but Vegas itself, no tourism, no partying, no sports.
It's wild. It's wild.
Are casinos open? I mean, I guess you could still survive off of like online gambling. People are at home. Maybe that's the solution here, that everyone's just like.
But that's not
logged on.
localized to Vegas, right? That
Right.
cannibalizes Vegas too.
Good point. I don't know. I'm not a big gambler, so I don't really know what people are going through, other than every now and then I'll see like marble racing and they'll think, are people actually putting money on marble racing?
That marble racing video is insane. It's
Gripping.
so good. It's so good. That turquoise marble had
blue
it.
marble!
They had it. He had it. Oh my! He just didn't want it enough at the end, man. No clutch gene, man. Woo! That was crazy.
Huge choker.
I've been watching a lot of domino videos too. Those are very satisfying. Cooking videos are kind of like I'm getting a little played out on those, but
No need to jump into it, but the cooking video is now the last bastion for the influencer. Like, all right, I can't put up like hot photos of me anymore. Because like
my yacht can't get a
haircut.
Right.
It's like I need a haircut. I don't have my nails are fucked. All right, I'm a cooking person now. I've got some onions. Check me out. And you're just like, oh man, your knife skills are trash.
I would post a photo of my yacht. Instead, it's going to be a shallot pasta, a famous shallot pasta. I've been trying to post photos of what I cook just to like motivate me a little bit. Every little bit helps. The incentive is just to like maybe have a conversation with somebody about something to eat.
that not to totally backtrack to the topic about you eating anchovies over the sink, but I do feel like taking photos and like sending them to my mom or sending them to like a group chat. Like, I feel like that's what you need. So you're sort of cooking for people. And if people are putting that up on Instagram, like that's not what I do. But I feel like if it's encouraging you to like try hard at eating well and cooking new things and presenting it in an interesting way and plating it and doing all that, and that's your reward is people being like damn, that looks good. That's probably a healthy thing.
Yeah, and it's it's not for everybody, and there's always a backlash to everything. But man, it's so easy to mute people on there that I'm just like, if there's something that's upsetting you on Instagram, you can take care of it. But people like to be backlash is what makes the wheel go round, or Earth go around the wheel.
So speaking of backlash and some of these Schadenfreude. Some of these emotions were conjured up over the weekend, when it was revealed that James Dolan, the beloved owner of the Knicks, tested positive for coronavirus. There was a lot of joy. Would you say it's fair to say? It was not a national day of mourning.
It was a ding dong, the witch is dead moment of Knicks Nation, right? Not shockingly, I have the annoying take, which is like, I don't wish this upon anybody, and I hope he gets better. And this is his fault, but it isn't his fault. Like the Knicks, what you're angry at is just bad luck with poor management, and I don't want anything bad to happen to him. I just think it's gross, and karma doesn't exist.
I think there are non-basketball reasons to be unsympathetic to Dolan.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of just running a basketball team and not liking his decisions, that's probably not worthy of like, I hope he dies of a lung infection.
Yeah.
Like, those we can separate.
Yeah.
If you want to go down the Dolan resume of other stuff he does, where he donates money, how he's treated people, different arguments. But the Knicks one, I'm not happy to see him ailing because of like the fact that he traded Kristaps Porzingis. And also, we did know, or at least it was initially told to us, that he was not really showing symptoms and felt fine.
Yeah.
So if it had said he's in critical condition, I think
for sure
the tone might have shifted a bit.
Hopefully, but there's always someone taking their shot with like 100 followers who are like, maybe I can get 25 followers,
I'm not saying it would have been totally different. I'm saying it could have been different.
Yeah, I mean, people got to shoot their shot, right? But yeah, it was very surreal because this is something we've joked about for decades, but when it actually manifests itself in this way, I'm just like, okay, let's pump the brakes and like step outside of our like tribalism with sports and games, you know, like this is not good.
The other thing was that if it had happened earlier in this entire Corona saga, it would have been a bigger deal.
Yeah.
At this point, it's like princes have it and heads of state and people are dying, and Dolan getting it was just like a quick news flash. Ooh,
Yeah.
Dolan got it. Crazy. Move on.
Yeah.
It didn't. It was like a blip in a way that it would have been a mountain of attention even a week and a half prior.
Shout out to Rudy Gobert, who, I mean, even Donovan Mitchell just is lost in that Rudy Gobert story. I mean,
Rudy
he was the
Gobert,
first.
he's got his antibodies in order and he's living his best life right now.
That's right.
Probably on a yacht.
He's DeVito, and Officer Mitchell is Schwarzenegger.
So basketball-wise, that was the only real story that emerged, right? I mean,
There's these awesome debates on Twitter about how good Derrick Rose is, which was kind of fun to think about stupid stuff like that for an hour. I think it was start one, bench one, cut one, and the three options all in their primes were Derrick Rose, Russell Westbrook, and Kyrie Irving. Immediately, what's your take on that? Rank the top three. Rank them in order. My bad.
Kyrie, Russ, and Rose.
Ooh, interesting. I had,
But I understand.
Russ and
I understand.
Kyrie.
I understand the argument for Russ too.
Yeah, I agree. I think Rose, even in his amazing MVP season, he was kind of a fraudulent MVP, right? We had LeBron exhaustion. He was very good that season, very, very good, but not.
He was really good.
Yeah, awesome. Like I believe like BPM 2 had him at a 6.8. But that's really good, lower than Kyrie and Westbrook. Their accomplishments in a lot of different stats.
Rose and Westbrook are very similar. Rose didn't have that sort of triple-double pile driver instinct, but they're pretty similar.
Yeah.
Poor shooters. They like pull-up jumpers. They like getting into the paint. They like finishing at the rim. They're mediocre defenders.
They can pass a bit.
I think Russ is a better passer, but Rose was like a capable passer too.
Yeah.
They're just sort of similar. I think Russ is a better version of that than Rose.
Yeah, they're not visionary passers. They're kind of bailout passers. You know, they kick it out to shooters.
See, I think Russ doesn't get enough credit.
That's fair. Go on.
Russ's use of diagonal passing is really, really exceptional. He is incredibly good at attacking the rim at high speeds and just kicking the ball out in various directions. There are times when he takes an ill-advised pull-up shot instead of making a pass. But Russ is really good at generating excellent open looks for his teammates, especially in transition and going downhill and like sucking the defense into the paint. He's really good at that. But Rose always reminded me a little more of like the classic New York City style point guard passer. The guy who shakes his man, gets up in the air, the defense comes, and he kind of like drops the ball off, or he kind of like kicks it out a little bit. It's not really that like harsh geometry that I prefer from like my like passing geniuses.
Yeah, and
I don't know if it's harsh geometry, like a beautiful, beautiful geometry rather than harsh geometry.
direct geometry, maybe.
It's just like a more angular style of passing, of like reading it spatially than just sort of being like, all right, the defense is here. Now let me just kind of like flip the ball back in your direction.
I saw this debate as less interesting in terms of Rose, because Rose is Rose, and he was really good. But to me, he's a story we've seen a lot. As you said, he's a classic New York City baller. But
Who loves him so much? Why does he keep getting brought up? Is it just Chicago fans? Is it just Bulls guys? Because he was from Chicago, you know, he really repped being a Chicagoan. He played for the Bulls. Is it just like fanboy love for like a native son who was, you know, derailed by injury? Is that who like sticks around on an annual basis, just like riding for Derrick Rose?
Well, where I was going with this point was like,
Sorry.
no, it's totally fair. And I was trying to arrive at this place. Like, this is a discussion about our perception of Westbrook. This is a Westbrook discussion. And I think the way we talk about Russ has like kind of taken two different inverse arcs, right? Two different bell curves, inverse and normal. Like, the people who loved him getting MVP for averaging a triple-double have kind of like sold on him a little bit because the wrinkles in that have become more visible, and especially now that Daryl Morey covets him, and that's an immediate warning sign for a type of fan.
Well, the boomers' conventional wisdom caught up.
Yes, right. And that changed. And like, I think I'm speaking for myself, but maybe based off what you just said, like, we're kind of the inverse bell curve where we're coming on the end of being like, oh, we judged him too harshly in those stat accumulation years. He's actually a really, really excellent player that's valuable. And our subjective bias would say, Daryl Morey can see it. Now we can see it too, you know? And I think it was an indictment, or maybe it was a representation of, to your question, how you look at Derrick Rose, the prototype of Derrick Rose versus the prototype of Westbrook in its detail, because you're right, they're kind of the same guy.
I think we had an era of time in which Derrick Rose excelled, and shortly thereafter, Westbrook excelled without being capable shooters from beyond the arc. They were mediocre at best. And then we've seen conventional wisdom embrace and overvalue shooting over the last like 2 or 3 years. And Rose gets a pass because we view his career as being abbreviated. That he was an MVP winner who then shortly had to make this miraculous comeback from knee injuries. And now he's still pretty good, but he's just not the same player. We don't compare Rose today to the MVP playing Rose. They are two different men.
No. Yep.
And Russ, on the other hand, has played through this entire changing of public perception, of common knowledge, of shifting towards obsession over shooting. And it became like, oh, well, Russ is just, I know he had triple doubles, but now, the guy can't shoot threes. He takes too many mid-range jumpers. His rebounding stats and assist stats are inflated. And then now it takes someone like Daryl Morey who understands that we're post-shooting. Mm-hmm. And he's like, Westbrook is really valuable. We're just post-shooting.
Just getting him on your team is value, even though his contract is big. The fact that he was available in the market, I mean.
Yeah, and Morey looked at their roster and said, we can have a high-powered, effective offense with one non-shooter. Mm-hmm. And we're going to have it be Westbrook. And you're going to have to deal with that.
The best non-shooter in the league, maybe.
Yeah. You look at all these teams, like they should all be building like that. And before I start talking about like Ben Simmons and Giannis, and Zion, and look at, Hollis Jefferson. They've put him in lineups with shooters everywhere, and all of a sudden he's good. He's a really good player. Great defender, scores okay. Mm-hmm. And the good GMs understand this. And when you look at the way that the Bucks have built around Giannis, it's obvious. When you look at the way that Westbrook is being utilized in Houston, it's obvious. When you look at the way that the Sixers have struggled offensively, it's also obvious. Mm-hmm. But anyway, I like the fact that it's not really about Derrick Rose. It's really about Westbrook.
Yeah.
And Kyrie's just kind of an odd constant that floats alongside of it, who won a championship and is awesome, but it's not really him. It's really about Westbrook and Rose.
I mean, it's a boomer's paradox, right? Because the farthest Rose got, shout out to Rose, who got to the Eastern Conference Finals. Like, that's a huge achievement. He was right there. I believe he lost 1-4 against the Cavs. Oh, no, the Heatles. That's a huge achievement. I think he can be psyched on that. But Kyrie has a ring, and the argument against that would be like, well, he plays with a great player like LeBron. I'm like, yo, do you even watch the games, bro? Like, that series, he balled out. He was a problem for Golden State.
Also, Derrick Rose played with LeBron.
Yes, but he was already compromised. But
I know,
right,
it was a shell of him. But like, I like it as but
Can you imagine Derrick Rose and Karl Anthony Towns on the same team? It's amazing. Oh my God, we're talking repeat championships.
oh, if you could get like Georgie Jiang on that team,
Shout out to him, whose contract has made our view of him kind of funny, but he's a good player when he gets minutes.
he's taking the photos of David Geffen from his own yacht that's bigger.
Yeah. Read the room, Gorgie.
So, all right. So one topic that I wanted to bring up, because there is a lot of time to talk about other things in the basketball world. I was thinking about the short players, the shortest of players, the littlest players in NBA history. And for the purposes of this conversation, which is highly unscientific, we're going to say 5'7" and under qualifies. Mm-hmm. Now, I want your opinion here, Kuo, because, I'm 6'2". I walk these streets like a god. I look down at shorter people the way you probably view snails and salamanders and ents.
And Drake's kid.
Emps.
Drake's kid for a few more years, but
yeah,
not forever.
And even when I played basketball and I matched up against someone who's like 6'8" or 6'9", I have so much heart and so much strength that it's really a clash of titans, of tall equals than a mismatch, What is it that's preventing the league from having more than like a handful of dudes 5'7" and under in its history? Why is it so hard to have just a few little dudes in the league?
Because being a world-class chess player is a talent, and height is a talent in the NBA. And when you're dealing with a pool of talented people, it's harder for someone without that talent to get there.
And none of them play today either. Isaiah Thomas, borderline MVP candidate, probably about 5'9".
Yeah, he's too tall for your 5'7" class. The class
there was a little bit of an era where you had a few of these guys around. There's none right now.
I mean, my guy, Earl Boykins, 5'5". Yeah. He had some good seasons. I mean, the most famous ones would be Muggsy Bogues. We're getting dangerously close to pre-NBA.
Oh, some of these guys
references.
are pre-NBA. I went back and looked at this list, and I'm going to give you guys a list. And it's actually a really interesting group.
Shout out to the Knicks.
It would make sense that they'd be interesting, but they are really interesting. And a few of the guys I want to get out of the way early on were a guy by the name of Red Klotz.
That's a hard name. That's the hardest name I've ever heard in my life. That's harder than Nichols.
Red Klotz is a hard name. I mean, it definitely sounds coarse in some ways as well.
His real name is Herm.
But yeah, Red Klotz played in the NBA for a couple of years, but he ended up being the guy who sort of founded the Washington Generals, which is fascinating, and went on to lose to the Harlem Globetrotters for years and years and years with Red Klotz on that team.
Rest in peace, Curly, one of my heroes growing up.
True. So Red Klotz, interesting guy in that respect, and he actually hit like a game winner for the Washington Generals and shocked everyone one time. And I think his quote was, "It was like Santa Claus was dead" or something. Also, the first non-white player on the Knicks in 1947, Wataru Misaka.
That's right. Original
Japanese
Insanity.
Guy. Yeah. And I know he met Jeremy Lin a couple years ago before he passed away, and I saw some photos of that, and I was like, that's pretty cool.
So
yeah.
Cool.
He led Utah to a couple of championships at Madison Square Garden, and then played for a couple seasons maybe with the Knicks. Mm-hmm. Did not have a distinguished career other than being first non-white person in the entire NBA.
Huge.
As I said, an interesting list. I know I'm just reading off a list now, but still interesting. But here's the group that I want to get into, the more modern dudes. The Muggsies and Spuds and Earl Boykins and like Keith Mr. Jennings. There's a guy named Greg Grant that people probably don't really remember, but he was on those like Barkley, Manute Bol Sixers teams do. But really, Muggsy, Spud, and Earl Boykins, I think, are the important ones here.
Nate Robinson does not make this list.
Too big.
Too big.
Like Muggsy and Spud were sort of cultural icons for being short. And Boykins gave his name to a highly influential
cat Instagram.
anchovy eater. So why did you pick Earl Boykins?
He's 5'5".
as your alter ego.
I'm 5'5". He's 5'5". I loved him. He wasn't as well loved. Like, you expect all these guys to just be like the best teammates. Like Muggsy was beloved throughout the NBA. Spud too. But Earl Boykins, I think, had a reputation of being salty. Maybe I have that reputation. No. It's just about his height. I am salty, but his being 5'5" was awesome because I could see myself on the court when he played. Kind of, if I was like a genius basketball player, which I'm not. But just my height alone was awesome to just see play out on my TV.
He wasn't bad.
He was not bad at all. I think his career BPM is Tobias Harris-esque. I think it was a net 0.
Many people have compared Tobias Harris with Earl Boykins.
Boykins,
but Spud got a lot of notoriety for winning a dunk contest at his miniature status, and he had crazy springs, like no doubt.
That was an awesome contest. He looks cool when he dunks optically,
Yeah, and also this wasn't back in the day when they wore like fairly tight uniforms, so he definitely was just this little figure in the air.
Him just doing a simple 360 dunk with a force looked amazing, just because his trajectory to the rim.
And Spud was kind of a star solely because of that. I would want to watch. I remember like wanting to watch Spud Webb and being interested in Muggsy Bogues just because they were little. And I kind of miss that we don't have like the little dude anymore.
I know. I mean, I don't, only because it gives like more opportunity for people to mock me. But I'm old now, so like I don't get mocked that much anymore. I ignore Twitter. But when I was a young buck like Joe Biden, and Muggsy Bogues was in the league, and I would play basketball, I'd get harassed a little bit by my buddies. It's all in good fun.
The weird thing about Muggsy and Spud in retrospect is that neither of them could shoot. So not only were they really little, they had to score all their points kind of around the basket. It's a very odd prototype.
This is
tiny dudes who can't shoot.
This is a long gone cookies discussion, but it just reminded me of when you said that. We're like the human brain trying to piece together a well-rounded team, being like, oh, right, so the point guard is short. And the big guy is really, really tall. The tallest guy we can get is the big guy. Done. We have those bookends. And like we veered away from that in modern basketball because we realized that causes disadvantages to your team in most cases. And
yeah, it's true. Like Muggsy was not bad. Not a bad player.
Yeah.
But he's
defender.
exactly what you think.
Yeah.
Like a tiny guy who stole the ball a few times, like took really good care of the rock, had like a 4-to-1 assist to turnover ratio, had quite a few assists, couldn't shoot at all, barely scored, and it's like trapped in amber as the pure point guard from the mid 90s.
Yeah, but you see him ball out in a gym or in a pre-draft workout, and you're like, oh, this is funny. He's my prototypical shooter or assist guy because he fits the part, and we don't do much of that anymore.
I mean, I guess the lack of dudes in the NBA who are this small is just really a testament to how difficult it is to make the NBA. That if you are 5'7" and blessed with all these incredible basketball skills, there's also someone who's 5'9". There's also someone at 6 foot. There's also someone at 6'3" that is at least somewhat comparable. You have to be such an outlier to not only make up for your lack of height, but to make up for people's perception about it.
For sure. I mean, there's no way to frame this as like and this gets back to our representation kind of discussion we always have. There's no way to get around the fact that being short in the NBA is a disadvantage, and the fact that there aren't any players under 5'7" currently isn't an indictment on our narrow-mindedness. It just doesn't work in the simulation.
Well, I think it's an indictment of people under 5'7".
Yeah, they can't play. They
Get
have to
your
be
skills up.
Or let's just say not many 7-footers can be good ping pong players. It's tough in the age of representation, just being okay, we need a 7-footer on this ping pong team because we cannot just ignore them. And I'm like, true. In our minds, you have the right idea, but in basketball, Isaiah Thomas going for that Brinks truck, I think a lot of teams identified the risks there, and he's a baller, man. I think he could work anybody in any YMCA throughout America. But in the NBA, his size you have to build around his size in the way the Celtics did in his MVP caliber season. And that's just too difficult. And you just choose another player who's worse at basketball, but a little bit taller.
And if you're going to put a defensive liability on the court, they have to be so good offensively. Mm-hmm. And the guys we're talking about who were 5'7" and below were never that good offensively. They were useful, they were helpful, they could take care of the ball, but they were never Isaiah Thomas, who could destroy you. They were never Trae Young, who you can run an entire offense through. I mean, he's not even that little, but I'm just sort of talking about guys who can't defend. Mm-hmm. The weakest defenders in the entire NBA. You either have to be a phenomenal shooter or you have to be explosive offensively. And it's hard to do that at 5'7".
Yo, shout out to Muggsy Bogues, who had a positive defensive box plus minus. 0.4.
Bogues, he was a little ball hawk.
Yeah, he steals maestro. His career steal percentage was 2.7.
Excellent.
I mean, he's eye to eye with that ball. I loved him, obviously.
And that iconic photo of him and Manute Bol when they were teammates together.
Yeah.
With Washington Bullets.
Yeah.
Shout out to the little guys in the NBA. Look, these are the things that are worth re-exploring in the age of COVID. For real. Yeah. I would never have gone back and looked at the dudes of 5'7" and under. By the way, the guy that we didn't talk about, who no one remembers at all, was Mr. Jennings. He was a college superstar. And I did not look it up. I want to say it was at East Tennessee State. Because I vaguely remember. I did not look up his college career. But I remember him being a monster in the tournament. And he never got a chance in the NBA. But I think he might have actually been good. But because he was little, no one gave him a chance.
You're right. East Tennessee State.
I remember him. He was a beast.
Golden State Warriors for 3 years. Retired or out of the league before the NBA officially started. Before Kobe Bryant and Allen Iverson, the logo, ushered in the NBA we know now.
I think he was pretty good pre-NBA.
Yo, for 8 games, he had an offensive rating of 136.
Beast.
Oh, but he played an 80-game season with Golden State. His offensive rating was 119. That's not bad.
How were his other advanced metrics? I just remember him being good.
You're not going to be surprised. He is not Tobias Harris-esque. He's a distinctly positive BPM 2 guy at 1.4 for 3 seasons. He had never had a negative defensive or offensive BPM in his career.
Shout out to our short kings. Mr. Jennings, unsung small guy. Everyone wants to talk about Spud, Muggsy, Earl Boykins. The real king, Mr. Jennings.
And you're not calling him Mr. out of just respect. His nickname was actually Mr. Do you think it was a cynical take on the fact that he was short? Was it false praise?
If you went to East Tennessee State, I'm going to guess it's one of those like country-ass nicknames you get when you're like 4. Like, there he is, Little Mister or something.
Like Dabo Sweeney.
Yeah, I just think it was like his, his like older sister or his grandmother was like, "Oh, there he is, Mr. Jennings," and everyone's like, "That sounds great."
Yeah, it's like crying for more gruel. It's like, oh, look at Mr. Jennings over here. Wants more gruel.
Ooh, hoity-toity! You think you deserve less gruel, eh?
You gotta deserve less gruel.
Yes, Dr. Jennings, Professor Jennings.
Yeah, where's Brandon Jennings?
That was an interesting career that just ended.
Yeah. Is
He got a lot of mileage
China?
out of scoring 55 points in the Garden, though, or whatever it was.
A lot of people get mileage from scoring against the Knicks.
But Knicks fans thought he was good for like a decade.
Oh, God. I mean, I just remember how promising he was as a high school kid and then foregoing the unethical double NCAA. But,
Well, Brandon Jennings and who was the other guy who got a huge contract, also named Brandon, perhaps, that they were traded for each other? It was just an odd karmic, which does not exist, circle of two guys who were kind of unsuccessful and got hurt, but they were dealt for each other. It was like between the Suns and Milwaukee. I don't know, whatever. It's great radio. Brandon Knight.
Oh, Brandon Knight.
Yeah, like they're weirdly linked in a way of two young point guards who both teams thought they could build around, and they were swapped, and then they both sort of vanished off the face of the earth.
Well, it's because Brandon Knight was murdered by DeAndre Jordan. Remember?
The new GM of the and head coach of the Brooklyn Nets, DeAndre Jordan, the foundation for a East Coast championship team, a true pillar.
The Nets king.
Is this your king? Well, this has been yet another episode of Cookies.
I love cookies.
The most influential basketball podcast.
Game 1 down in the books.
I love cookies.
So many more to come.
Cookies.
Cookies.